The road ended where the maps stopped making sense. Beyond the last gas station, beyond the broken wooden sign, beyond the stretch of land where cell signals faded into silence, there was only wind and dust and a sky that felt too wide for comfort. Travelers rarely came this far. Those who did were usually running from something or searching for something they could not name. On an early autumn evening, a lone car moved slowly across that forgotten road. Inside sat a quiet figure known in scattered places by a name few people could pronounce correctly. A name carried through crowded cities glowing with neon, through quiet suburbs where porch lights stayed on too late, through years shaped by absence and questions that never found answers. This traveler was not chasing adventure. Not really. The journey had begun with a letter. A thin envelope without a return address. Inside there was only a single photograph and one careful line written in uneven ink. Beyond the gateway to nowhere lies the silent city. You were meant to find it. No explanation. No signature. Only the strange feeling that the words had been waiting for years. Most people would have thrown the letter away or laughed at the mystery. But this traveler had spent a lifetime feeling pulled toward places that did not appear on ordinary maps. Places where forgotten stories rested quietly beneath the surface, waiting for someone patient enough to listen. And so the road trip began. Across highways stretching like grey ribbons through the heart of the country. Past rusted billboards promising cheap coffee, warm pie, and rooms with working air conditioning. Through small towns where time slowed down on purpose and strangers still nodded when passing on the sidewalk. Along the way memories rose like shapes inside morning fog. A childhood filled with motion. Suitcases half-packed. Bedrooms that never felt permanent. New schools, new faces, new beginnings that always ended too soon. Questions about family history were answered with soft smiles or gentle changes of subject. Nothing harsh. Nothing cruel. Just silence shaped like protection. There had once been someone who knew the truth. An older relative with tired eyes and patient hands. Someone who almost spoke many times. Someone who always stopped just before the important part. That voice was gone now. Taken quietly by illness before the past could unfold. All that remained were fragments. Photographs without names. Stories that ended in the middle. And a feeling deep inside that something important had been hidden on purpose. The photograph from the letter felt different. It showed an archway made of pale stone standing alone in an empty landscape. No roads leading toward it. No buildings surrounding it. Only the arch and the long shadow stretching across cracked silent earth. At first glance it looked abandoned. But the longer one stared, the more it felt like an entrance. Not ruined. Not forgotten. Waiting. The traveler could not explain why the image felt familiar. Yet it did. In the quiet way a dream sometimes lingers after waking. In the way certain songs feel known even when heard for the first time. Days passed on the road. Gas stations became rare. Radio stations dissolved into soft waves of static. Even the color of the sky seemed to change, growing wider, paler, more distant. By the time the car reached the final mark, town evening light was already fading into gold. The town itself felt suspended between past and present. One long main street. A barber shop with faded paint. A grocery store window filled with handwritten price signs. And a diner glowing warm beneath a flickering neon word that had lost a letter long ago. Inside the diner a handful of locals spoke in low steady voices. Coffee steamed from thick white mugs. Country music drifted softly from an old ceiling speaker carrying a melody about distance and home. When the traveler stepped through the door, conversations paused for half a heartbeat. Not suspicion. Not welcome. Something quieter. Like recognition without memory. A simple meal was ordered. Eggs, toast, coffee. Food meant for comfort, not attention. But the silence in the room carried weight. At the counter an elderly server studied the traveler with calm, gentle curiosity. Not asking questions. Just watching as though searching for a detail hidden beneath the surface of an ordinary face. Finally the server spoke in a voice shaped by years of listening more than talking. You heading past the ridge? The traveler hesitated only a moment before answering yes. The server nodded slowly as if confirming a thought carried for a very long time. Not many go that way anymore. Road fades out. Nothing left past it. A pause settled between them. The kind of pause that makes truth feel close. After a while, the server added another quiet sentence. Some folks used to say there was something out there. Long before my time. Before the maps changed. A tight feeling formed in the traveler's chest. Not fear. Something closer to recognition. The photograph was placed gently on the counter between them. Have you ever seen this? The server did not touch the picture. Only leaned closer. Eyes narrowing slightly as memory searched through distant years. Silence stretched wide. Then a slow breath. Never seen it myself. But I heard stories when I was young. Old voices talking about a place beyond a stone gate. Said it disappeared one day. Like it chose not to be found. The words rested heavily in the air between coffee steam and quiet music. Did they ever say who built it? The server's head moved slowly from side to side. No one knew. That was the strange part. A whole city with no beginning. No records. Just whispers. Outside, the dynamite gathered across the empty street. Streetlights hummed softly. Wind carried dust in slow wandering circles. The traveler finished the meal without tasting it. Mind turning the same question again and again. If the city vanished, why send the letter now? When it was time to leave, the server spoke once more. If you go past the ridge, try not to stay after dark. Why? Another pause. Longer than before. Heavier. Because the silence out there. It isn't the normal kind. The traveler stepped back into the cooling night carrying those words like an echo that refused to fade. The car engine started with a low steady sound. Headlights carved a narrow path through darkness as the road climbed slowly toward the unseen ridge. Miles passed without signs of life. No houses. No passing cars. Only open land stretching beneath a sky crowded with unfamiliar stars. There was a moment when turning back would have been easy. Reasonable. Safe. But something deeper than logic guided the hands resting on the steering wheel. A quiet certainty that the answer to a lifetime of unanswered questions waited somewhere ahead. At the top of the ridge, the pavement narrowed into broken asphalt. Then into gravel. Then into little more than a memory of a road traced faintly across the earth. The car stopped where moving forward no longer felt possible. Engine silent. Darkness immediate. Real silence. The kind that presses softly against the ears until even breathing sounds loud. The traveler stepped out into cool night air. Each breath forming a faint silver cloud that disappeared almost instantly. For a long moment nothing moved. Then slowly shapes revealed themselves in the distance. Not buildings. Not ruins. Just darker shadows resting inside the dark. Drawn forward by curiosity stronger than caution, the traveler began to walk across the rough, uneven ground. Each step crunching softly. Each heartbeat louder than the last. And then it appeared. The arch from the photograph. Standing alone beneath the wide, patient stars. Pale stone glowing faintly in the moonlight. Surface smooth, untouched by weather or time. No cracks. No damage. As if the years had passed around it instead of over it. The space beneath the arch looked empty. Yet the air shimmered slightly like warmth rising from desert sand. A strange calm spread slowly through the traveler's chest. Not comfort. Something older. Something waiting. For a long breath of time there was only stillness. Then a sound. Soft. Distant. Almost imagined. Footsteps. Not behind. Not nearby. From somewhere beyond the arch. The traveler's breath caught as the heart began to race with sudden impossible hope. Someone was there. Or something. A question formed without words. Had the silent city truly vanished? Or had it been waiting quietly for the one person meant to return? The traveler took one careful step closer to the gateway. And the air beyond it began to glow. Faint at first. Barely visible. Then slowly brighter. Like the beginning of dawn rising from the ground instead of the sky. The journey was no longer just a search. It had become an answer calling from the other side. What waited beyond the light? And why had this traveler been chosen after so many silent years? The truth remained hidden. Just past the threshold. Breathing softly in the glow. The glow did not hurt the eyes. It felt soft, almost gentle, like morning light slipping through a window before waking. Yet it came from a place where morning should not exist. The traveler stood at the edge of the archway, listening to the quiet sound of breathing that might have been their own, or might have belonged to something waiting beyond sight. Every instinct shaped by ordinary life whispered to step back, to return to the car, to drive toward noise and streetlights and familiar uncertainty. But another feeling moved deeper than fear, a pull older than memory, a sense of recognition that had no clear beginning. Slowly, carefully, one foot crossed the shadow beneath the stone. The air changed. Not colder, not warmer, just different in a way that words could not easily hold. Sound faded first. The distant wind disappeared. The soft movement of clothing grew silent. Even the rhythm of breathing seemed to slow, as if the world itself were listening. Then came the scent. Faint traces of rain on dry earth. Old wood. Something like distant smoke carried from a place unseen. The traveler opened their eyes wider without realizing they had begun to close them. The darkness beyond the arch was no longer empty. Shapes were forming. Not suddenly. Not sharply. But slowly, like memory returning after years of absence. A road appeared first. Stone instead of asphalt. Worn smooth by footsteps rather than tires. It stretched forward into a pale mist glowing with the same quiet light. On either side shadows rose and settled into outlines of buildings. Tall, narrow structures with windows that held no glass. Balconies shaped with careful detail. Doorways standing open as if waiting for voices that had stepped out only moments ago. Yet no movement came. No sound of life. No echo of conversation. Only silence layered so deeply it felt almost alive. The silent city. The words from the letter returned with sudden weight. You were meant to find it. The traveler stepped fully through the gateway. Behind them the arch still stood. But the land beyond it was gone. Replaced by endless pale mist. There was no simple way back now. A slow breath filled the chest, followed by another. Each one steady but heavy with the understanding that something important had already begun. Walking forward felt natural. As if the stones beneath each step remembered the shape of these footsteps from long ago. Buildings revealed more detail with every step. Carved symbols along the walls. Patterns shaped like flowing water or drifting stars. Marks that looked almost like language, yet not one the traveler recognized. Fingers brushed lightly across the surface of a nearby wall. The stone felt warm. Not from sunlight. From something inside. A pulse so faint it might have been imagination. Farther down the road a shape rested in the center of an open square. A fountain without water. A circle of sculpted figures facing inward. Their faces smooth and calm. Eyes closed as if listening to something beneath the ground. The traveler moved closer, drawn by quiet curiosity. At the edge of the fountain lay objects scattered gently across the stone. Not broken. Not abandoned in panic. Placed. Small metal tools. A folded piece of cloth. A cup shaped from pale clay. Every item carried the same strange stillness. Like time had paused without warning. A thought rose slowly. What if the city had not been destroyed? What if it had simply stopped? The silence deepened as that idea settled. Footsteps echoed softly across the square, though no sound should have existed. The traveler turned quickly, heart lifting with sudden hope. No one stood there. Only empty streets fading into glowing mist. Yet the feeling of presence remained. Not threatening. Not welcoming. Watching. A memory surfaced without invitation. Childhood dreams that had come again and again. Walking through quiet streets. Searching for someone never seen. Waking just before reaching the end. Those dreams had faded with age. Until now. A low sound drifted through the air. Not quite music. Not quite wind. More like a single distant tone held gently without end. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The traveler followed it down a narrow path between leaning buildings. Past doorways filled with soft light. Past windows where shadows almost moved but never fully formed. With each step emotions grew harder to name. Sadness without clear cause. Comfort without reason. A quiet sense of belonging shaped from something long forgotten. At the end of the path stood a larger structure rising above the others. Wide steps leading upward. Tall doors carved with the same flowing symbols seen across the city. Unlike everything else, the doors were closed. The sound was stronger here. Still soft. Still distant. But steady like a heartbeat beneath stone. The traveler paused at the bottom step. A sudden fear surfaced. Not of danger. Of truth. Because somewhere deep inside a realization was beginning to form. If this place was connected to the past, then answers might live here. Answers that could change everything known about family, about memory, about self. Hands trembled slightly while reaching toward the door. Before touching it, another sound appeared. Footsteps again. This time clear. Behind. The traveler turned slowly, breath caught between hope and disbelief. A figure stood at the far end of the path. Not shadow. Not illusion. Someone real. Tall, still wrapped in pale light that softened every detail. The face remained difficult to see, as if memory itself blurred the edges. But the presence felt familiar in a way that reached deeper than recognition. The figure did not move closer. Did not speak. Only waited. 1,000 questions pressed forward, yet no words came. Finally, the traveler managed a quiet whisper. "Who are you?" For a long moment nothing changed. Then the figure lifted one hand slowly and pointed toward the closed doors at the top of the steps. Not an order. Not a warning. An invitation. The meaning settled gently but firmly. The answers were inside. When the traveler looked back toward the figure again, the space was empty. No fading movement. No sound of departure. Only silence returning to its endless watch. Heart racing, the traveler turned back toward the steps. Each step upward felt heavier than the last. Not from effort. From memory pressing closer. Images flickered at the edge of thought. A child holding someone's hand. A voice telling a story about a hidden place. A promise made softly in the dark. The top step arrived sooner than expected. The doors stood tall before waiting without impatience. Carved symbols along the surface seemed to shift slightly when not looked at directly. Like meaning trying to reveal itself. Hands rested against the cool stone. For a moment doubt returned. If the door opened, nothing would ever feel ordinary again. If it stayed closed, questions would remain forever. A slow breath filled the quiet. Then gentle pressure forward. The doors moved without sound. Light spilled through the opening, soft and endless. And from somewhere deep inside the silent city, a voice began to speak. Not aloud. Not in any language. But clear as memory. Welcome back. The words carried warmth. And sorrow. And something like relief after a very long wait. The traveler stepped across the threshold, unsure whether to feel fear or peace. Because one truth was becoming impossible to ignore. This city was not just found. It was remembered. The light inside the doorway felt endless yet gentle. It did not shine like a lamp or burn like the sun. It surrounded everything softly, as if the air itself carried memory. When the traveler stepped fully into the hall, the doors behind closed without sound. Not trapped. Just sealed in quiet certainty. The space within was vast. Wider than the building should have allowed. Tall pillars rising like pale trees toward a ceiling lost in glow. Smooth stone beneath each step, warm with the same faint pulse felt outside. At the center of the hall stood a single long table carved from white stone. Nothing rested on it. No dust. No marks of time. Only stillness waiting. The voice returned again, not spoken yet clearly heard. You took longer than we hoped. The traveler turned slowly, searching for the source. No figure appeared. Only light moving gently across the pillars. A question formed before courage could stop it. Who is we? For a moment the silence deepened. Then memory answered instead of sound. Images unfolded behind the eyes. A group of people standing beneath the same glowing ceiling. Faces calm yet filled with quiet urgency. Hands joined not in fear but in promise. The vision faded as softly as it came. We are what remains. The meaning felt heavy and fragile at once. Not ghosts. Not echoes. Something between presence and remembrance. The traveler's heart beat faster with a strange mixture of comfort and grief. Why bring me here? Because you were never meant to stay away. The words stirred something buried deep. A feeling older than childhood. Older than any clear memory. Fragments began to rise. A lullaby without language. Warm hands lifting toward the light. Stone streets that once held laughter instead of silence. The traveler stepped closer to the table, drawn by instinct rather than thought. As fingers touched the smooth surface, another vision opened. Not inside the mind. All around. The silent hall filled with movement. People walked between the pillars. Voices blended in calm conversation. Soft music drifted through the air like slow breathing. The city alive. Children running across the stone floor. Lanterns glowing along distant walls. Windows open to a sky brighter than day. Emotion struck suddenly and deeply. A longing so sharp it almost felt like pain. Home. The word arrived without explanation. Then the vision shifted. The same hall later. Voices quieter. Faces lined with worry. A circle gathered around the table, speaking in low, urgent tones. Outside the walls, the sky darkened unnaturally. Light fading not into night but into emptiness. A choice had been made here. The traveler felt it without hearing the words. A sacrifice shaped from love and fear. The vision fractured into darkness. Breath returned sharply as the empty hall stood silent once more. Tears rested unnoticed along the traveler's face. What happened to them? The answer came slowly, carrying the weight of years. We stepped beyond time. To keep the city from being taken. Taken by what? For the first moment the light dimmed slightly. As if even memory feared the shape of that truth. Forgetting. The single word echoed softly across the pillars. Not destruction. Not war. Something quieter. Something that erases instead of breaks. The traveler tried to understand. You hid the city. We protected what could still be remembered. Another realization formed. Then why am I here now? Because memory fades. Even for us. The words trembled with something close to sorrow. The city needs a living heart to remain. Silence followed. Heavy with meaning. The traveler stepped back slowly. You mean me. You carry the last unbroken thread. Images returned faster now. A child leaving the city in sleeping arms. Carried through the stone gateway as light folded inward. Voices whispering promises to meet again when the time was right. The breath caught painfully. I was born here. Not born. Chosen. The difference felt important though difficult to grasp. Your life outside kept the memory alive in the world that forgets. Emotion rose in waves impossible to hold back. Grief for a place lost. Anger for a truth hidden. Wonder at something too vast to measure. Why not tell me sooner? Because a child cannot choose freely. Only an adult can return. The quiet honesty of that answer left no space for argument. The traveler looked around the empty hall now filled with invisible presence. If I stay, what happens? The light grew warmer, almost hopeful. The city breathes again. Time opens. We return. And if I leave? A pause longer than any before. Then silence becomes final. The meaning settled deeply. This was not only a discovery. It was a decision. Footsteps sounded softly behind, though no one stood there. A reminder of all the lives waiting just beyond sight. The traveler's chest tightened. A life existed outside this place. Roads. Voices. Ordinary mornings filled with sunlight and noise. Could all of that be left behind? Another question surfaced, trembling. Would I still be myself? The answer came like a gentle promise. You would become whole. The hall brightened slightly as if hope itself produced light. Yet doubt remained. Memory alone could not guide a choice this large. I need to see more. The request barely rose above a whisper. For the first time the voice carried something like relief. Then walk with us once more. The floor beneath the traveler's feet shimmered softly. Stone becoming light. Light becoming motion. The hall dissolved into another place within the city. A quiet street at dawn. Windows glowing warm. distant bells ringing slow and peaceful. Life before the silence. Figures moved around the traveler unseen yet deeply felt. A hand brushing past. Laughter carried on cool air. The simple comfort of belonging without question. Tears returned not from sadness alone, but from recognition of something the heart had searched for across an entire lifetime. The vision continued forward through moments both beautiful and fragile. Festivals of soft color drifting through the streets. Long evenings filled with shared stories. Promises spoken beneath endless stars. Then slowly the joy thinned. Conversations turned serious. Eyes lifted often toward a sky losing light. Children held closer than before. The final memory approached like a closing door. The gateway glowing brighter than ever. People gathered in silent lines. Not forced. Choosing. One by one they stepped away from time, leaving the world of forgetting behind. At the front of the line a small child slept peacefully in familiar arms. Carried outward. Sent away. Saved. The traveler felt the weight of that moment more deeply than any other. Love strong enough to let go. The vision faded, gently returning to the silent hall. Breathing felt different now. Heavier. Wiser. Closer to truth. The choice waiting ahead was no longer mysterious. It was personal. Stay and restore a hidden world of memory. Or leave and allow silence to finish what forgetting began. The light pulsed softly around the pillars as if the city itself waited without pressure. No voice spoke. No force guided. Only quiet. For the first time since crossing the gateway, the traveler understood something simple and terrifying. This decision would shape more than one life. It would decide whether the silent city remained a memory, or became real again. The silence inside the hall no longer felt empty. It felt patient, like the pause between heartbeats, like the moment just before a storm decides whether to break or pass. The traveler stood at the center of the glowing pillars carrying the weight of two worlds. One world filled with movement, noise, unfinished dreams, and ordinary mornings. The other holding memory untouched by time, waiting quietly for breath to return. Neither called louder than the other. That was what made the choice so heavy. For a long while nothing moved. Breathing slowed. Thoughts drifted without direction. Emotions rose and fell like distant waves. Images from the outside life appeared first. Highways stretching toward bright horizons. Coffee shared across small diner tables. Voices of strangers who had slowly become friends. The fragile beauty of living in a world that changes every single day. There was pain in that world. Loss that never fully healed. Questions that sometimes had no answers. But there was also surprise. Growth. Moments of quiet joy that arrived without warning. Then the other memories returned. Stone streets glowing in soft evening light. Laughter echoing between tall windows. A sense of belonging so complete it needed no explanation. A home that could never be lost. Because it existed outside forgetting. The traveler's chest tightened with the truth now impossible to escape. Choosing one world meant losing the other. A whisper of fear surfaced. What if I am not strong enough to carry this? The answer did not come as words. Instead, warmth spread gently through the air. Like unseen hands resting lightly on tired shoulders. Not strength alone. Love carried this place once. Love can carry it again. Tears formed quietly, not from sadness but from recognition of responsibility. The traveler walked slowly across the hall, each step echoing softer than breath. At the far edge of the pillars a narrow opening revealed another space beyond. A chamber smaller, more intimate, shaped like a circle. At its center stood a low structure of smooth stone. Upon it rested a single object. A small sphere of pale light, no larger than two hands together, glowing with the same living warmth felt throughout the city. The traveler approached without being told, somehow already knowing. This was the heart. Not a machine. Not magic in the way stories describe. Memory gathered. Love held in form. Time waiting to open again. The light inside the sphere moved slowly like drifting clouds. As the traveler drew closer, faint sounds emerged. Laughter. Footsteps. Voices speaking gently across distance. Every life that once filled the city resting quietly inside. The realization arrived with breathtaking clarity. If the heart awakened, they would return. Not as ghosts, as living presence. But the cost remained unspoken. The traveler's voice trembled slightly. What must I give? This time the answer came clearly. Soft yet unyielding. Your place in the world that forgets. Breath stopped. Not death. Not disappearance. But separation from everything known outside the gateway. No more wandering highways. No more accidental friendships. No more unknown future waiting beyond tomorrow. Only this city. Forever. Silence followed, allowing the truth to settle completely. The traveler closed their eyes, feeling the weight of every memory from both lives. A childhood shaped by movement and mystery. Years spent searching without knowing for what. Loneliness that never fully explained itself. All of it suddenly made sense. Every road had led here. A quiet laugh escaped through tears. So this was the reason. Not loss. Not confusion. Preparation. The eyes opened again, steady now. If I stay, will they truly live again? The sphere brightened slightly as if responding to hope itself. Yes. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Only truth. Another question followed, softer. Will they remember me? A warmth deeper than light filled the chamber. Always. The traveler looked around slowly, taking in every glowing surface, every silent pillar, every waiting shadow. This place had never demanded. Never forced. Only waited for love to choose freely. And that freedom made the answer clear. A long breath entered the lungs, then left just as slowly. Outside the gateway, an unfinished life stretched forward. Full of possibility. Full of forgetting. Inside this chamber, an ending and a beginning existed together. The traveler placed both hands gently around the sphere. It felt neither hot nor cold. Only alive. For one final moment, doubt flickered. A simple human wish. To keep both worlds. But some doors open only when another closes. Tears fell quietly onto the glowing surface. I am ready. The words barely formed, yet the city seemed to hear. Light expanded, instantly flowing upward like dawn breaking through stone. The chamber dissolved into brilliance. Sound returned, not loud but vast. Thousands of breaths taken at once. Thousands of heartbeats waking from long sleep. The traveler felt something leaving and something arriving at the same time. Memories of highways fading like mist in sunlight. Names of distant places growing soft. The outside world gently releasing its hold. In their place came warmth. Voices calling in joy. Footsteps rushing across living streets. Laughter rising toward an endless sky. The city breathing again. Through the brightness, shapes began to form around the traveler. Figures standing close. Not strangers. Family in a way deeper than blood. Faces filled with gratitude, wonder, relief. One stepped forward, eyes shining with tears not yet fallen. You kept the promise. The traveler tried to answer, but emotion held the voice still. Because the truth was larger than words. This was not sacrifice alone. It was return. The light slowly softened, revealing the hall restored. Color touched the stone. Movement filled the air. Life where silence had ruled for ages. Yet one question lingered quietly beneath the joy. What remained of the world beyond the gateway? The traveler felt the answer before hearing it. A memory like a distant dream. Real once. Now gently out of reach. Not gone. Simply no longer home. Peace settled where uncertainty had lived for years. For the first time there was nothing missing. Nothing searching. Only belonging. And as the city awakened fully around its living heart, a new truth began to unfold. Every ending carries the shape of a beginning. Even here. Especially here. Morning arrived without a sunrise. Light simply grew softer, then warmer, then full. As if the sky itself had taken a slow, quiet breath after years of waiting. The city no longer felt frozen in memory. It moved. Not quickly, not loudly. But with the gentle rhythm of life returning step by careful step. Voices drifted through the streets like music remembered from long ago. Doors opened. Windows welcomed the air. Footsteps crossed stone paths that had once known only silence. At the center of it, all the traveler stood very still. Not because of fear. Not because of doubt. Because peace had finally found a place to rest. For most of a lifetime there had always been motion. Searching. Wandering. Leaving before roots could grow. Now there was nowhere else to go. And for the first time that truth felt like comfort instead of loss. Figures passed nearby offering quiet smiles filled with recognition. No introductions were needed. No explanations required. They knew. And somehow the traveler knew them too. Not through memory of faces, but through something deeper than remembering. Belonging does not always need history. Sometimes it simply knows where it lives. The wide street ahead slowly filled with gentle movement. Children running with soft laughter. Voices calling from open doorways. The distant sound of water returning to the long silent fountain. Life unfolding again in ordinary beautiful ways. The traveler walked forward feeling the warmth of the stone beneath bare footsteps. Each step steady. Each breath calm. Nothing in this place rushed. Nothing demanded more than presence. Near the fountain a small group had gathered. Not in ceremony. Not in celebration loud enough to break the calm. Just standing together watching the water rise clear and shining into the morning air. One of them turned and met the traveler's eyes. Gratitude lived there. But also something quieter. Respect. Not for a hero. Not for a savior. For someone who had chosen love when forgetting would have been easier. No words were spoken. None were needed. Silence here was different from the silence beyond the gateway. This silence was full. Gentle. Alive. The traveler looked into the flowing water and saw no reflection of the long roads once traveled. No shadow of the wandering life left behind. Only the present moment resting softly in light. A question formed slowly. What happens now? The answer did not come from a voice in the air. It came from the simple movement of the city around them. Now we live. Such an ordinary truth. Yet it carried the weight of centuries. Time would move again here. Seasons would change. Stories would begin and end the way all living stories do. Nothing frozen. Nothing hidden. Just life continuing quietly. The traveler felt something unexpected then. Not relief. Not joy alone. Curiosity. After so many years searching for meaning. What would it feel like to simply exist without searching? The thought was both peaceful and unfamiliar. A child's laughter echoed nearby. Bright enough to pull attention like sunlight through leaves. Turning slowly, the traveler saw a small figure standing at the edge of the fountain. Watching with open, gentle curiosity. Their eyes met. For a moment the world felt perfectly still. Because in that gaze lived the same quiet question that had once lived in the traveler. Where do I belong? Understanding moved like warmth through the chest. The answer was no longer complicated. Here. With us. Alive. The traveler knelt beside the child and for the first time in this new life words came easily. You are home. The child smiled not as if hearing something new, but as if remembering something always known. And in that simple moment the traveler understood the final truth the journey had been leading toward. The silent city had never only needed saving. It needed someone to carry belonging forward. So silence would never return. Days began to pass though time felt softer here. Measured less by clocks, more by moments. Morning light across quiet streets. Shared meals filled with calm conversation. Evenings where stories rose gently into starlit air. The traveler learned the rhythms of this place slowly. Naturally. Like breathing. Nothing extraordinary. Nothing grand. Just living. And somehow that felt more powerful than any mystery. Yet sometimes at the far edge of awareness a faint memory stirred. Highways stretching toward distant horizons. Voices from another world moving too fast to hear clearly. Those memories no longer hurt. They felt like dreams from a different lifetime. Real once. Now resting peacefully. One evening as soft twilight settled across the city, the traveler walked alone toward the ancient gateway. Not from doubt. Not from regret. Only curiosity about the path once taken. The arch still stood pale and patient beneath the dimming sky, light shimmering quietly within its empty frame. But the pull to cross back was gone, because the question that once guided every step had finally been answered. Belonging is not a place you search for forever. It is a place that begins to breathe when you choose to stay. The traveler rested a hand against the smooth stone, feeling its steady warmth. Beyond it, the world of forgetting continued turning, full of people still searching, still wondering, still hoping. For a moment a quiet wish rose, that someday every lost traveler might find their own silent city, whatever shape it waited in, not hidden by magic, but hidden by the simple fear of choosing where the heart belongs. The hand slowly lowered. There was nothing more to ask of the gateway. Its purpose had been fulfilled. Turning back toward the living streets, the traveler felt only calm certainty. The journey had not ended. It had changed, because every tomorrow here would now be unwritten, open, real. And somewhere in the sound of evening voices and distant laughter a deeper understanding settled gently into place. The city was never truly silent. It had only been waiting for love strong enough to remember it. Night arrived, softly wrapping the streets in silver quiet. Lanterns glowed like fallen stars along the paths. Windows shone warm against the dark. From above, the city might have looked small against the endless sky, but inside it something infinite had begun again. A single choice, a single heart, opening time for countless lives. And far beyond the gateway, in the restless world that forgets, the wind moved across empty land where no road seemed to lead anywhere. Travelers sometimes passed without stopping, feeling only a strange calm they could not explain, as if somewhere close, just beyond sight, a forgotten city was quietly alive, waiting not to be found, but to be remembered. The story does not end with silence. It ends with belonging. And belonging, once chosen, never fades.